Now, the concept of body and Christianity, you can follow the main argument here in the PowerPoint presentation. It is no exaggeration to say the body is at the center of Christian theology. God has revealed himself in Jesus Christ in body and flesh. The doctrine of incarnation implies a theological affirmation of the body. Quote, the human body does not only can reveal God, it is a privileged medium of the divine self-disclosure. The body is intended to be the place of God's revelation. This is not only true with regard to Jesus Christ and the church as his body, but also with regard to the individual bodies of the believers. Despite the fact that human flesh is in danger to be subjected to the power of sin, Paul emphasizes that even this mortal flesh can and will be the place of the epiphany of Christ. In the Gospel of John, incarnation is described as the Logos becoming flesh. This implies that human beings in general are flesh sags. The ecclesial tradition has emphasized that flesh, according to John 14, refers to the whole human being, the entire person, including body, soul, and reason. The entire person is flesh. That what makes a human being a person is always embodied. While the Gospel of John emphasizes the carnality, die Fleischlichkeit of the Logos, Paul stresses the bodily existence of Christ. A contemplation of the biblical notion of sarx, of flesh, will be able to demonstrate the connection between the concept of flesh in the Gospel of John and the Pauline conception of the body. First, in the Bible, the flesh of animals and the flesh of humans are described with the same term both in Hebrew and in ancient Greek. The term flesh, applied to humans, puts them in an evolutionary continuity to animals and implies that human beings in some way are animals. Furthermore, the strong connection between animals and humans is emphasized in the Bible because both creatures are described as living beings. Both the Hebrew Bible and its Greek translation use the term living beings to describe animals and human beings. The biblical notion of flesh implies that animals and humans share the same living materiality. If we notice that in the Bible plants and trees are not perceived as living beings, it gets clear that the Bible conceives living beings, just as in common sense, in such a way that living beings are self-moved. Self-moved living beings are not just moved by pressure from outside, but they move themselves, and while moving, perceive themselves as moving. Thus, when human beings move, they simultaneously perceive themselves as both subject and object. So in every self-movement, subjectivity is present and effective. In all their actions, living beings appear both as physical and as psychic, as soma psychikon, as Paul writes, as a psychosomatic unity. To be flesh means to be a soma psychikon. Now, first point, the basic terminology as a sources of the concept in the Bible. Again, man is created in the image of God. The Hebrew term for image, salem, means well-crafted, generally three-dimensional statues. According to Norbert Lofing, we have to translate Genesis 1:27 as following: God created man as a statue, as God's statue, he created him. Thus, mankind represents God precisely in and through its body. The Old Testament perceives human beings as fundamentally embodied. Hans-Walter Wolff has demonstrated that the Hebrew term nephesh, which so far has often been translated as soul, meaning the Hebrew Bible, quotes the origin for the vital human needs which have to be met to ensure existence. If a person is described as nephesh, he or she is not understood as pure spiritual being, but is described in his or her embodied totality and embodied needs. Accordingly, in the Old Testament, emotional and cognitive functions are understood as embodied functions. In Psalm 84, longings attributed to the throat, joy is attributed to the heart and to the flesh. My throat longs, yes, even faints for the court of the Lord. My heart and flesh sing for joy to the living God. Even so, the heart receives a special position in the Old Testament. No unilateral hierarchy of the body is intended. For once, in different situations, different organs are emphasized. For example, the kidneys are mentioned in moral conflicts or relationship conflicts. What is more, different organs can stand in for each other. Particular attention deserves the fact how consistent the Old Testament describes the relationship with God as embodied. Throat and flesh thirst and yearn for God. Heart and flesh rejoice in the living God. Throat and belly praise God's holy name. And the bones rejoice when God hears the worshipper. In accordance with this, the promised new covenant with God is thought of as an embodied, even a fleshly covenant. The new heart is explicitly called a heart of flesh. The New Testament, too, understands the relationship between God and the human being as embodied. In the following, I will concentrate on Paul. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. Human beings are related to God only in and through the body, and God himself is related to the body of human beings. Paul writes, now the body is for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. Paul is fascinated by the human body. He was the first to use the term body to describe the Christian congregation. Paul sees the human body as a parable of the coming reality which is already manifest within the Christian congregation. What fascinates Paul about the human body is the mutual dependence of its limbs, but also the consideration for the supposedly weakest parts of the body, which is necessary in order for the whole body to work. The distinctive feature of the Pauline perception of the body becomes clear when compared with pagan texts in its environment. Antiquity knows the metaphor of the body as a reflection of an ideal society, but this metaphor usually supports existing social hierarchies. The human body is understood as hierarchically organized, and this perception supports the socially constructed contingent constitution of the society. In opposition to such a conception, Paul emphasizes that no member is of lesser value than any other. Rather, the supposedly weakest members are treated with the greatest respect. It is exciting that Paul does not only refer to the congregation as a body, furthermore, he assumed that this body is constituted via bodily interactions, first through baptism, second through the Lord's Supper. As an embodied person, the human being is always shaped by certain practices and traditions, by memories and expectations. Paul expresses this fact by saying that the body does not belong to itself, but it is always defined by others. There's no body which has not already been shaped socially and culturally. This insight for Paul is connected with the hope that the body can become new and begin anew. This hope is vouched for by baptism. In baptism, human beings have died to existing social norms and routines in order to walk in newness of life. In the early church, the baptized were integrated into a community which does not only held certain convictions, but which expressed these convictions in embodied forms in the celebration of the Lord's Supper. The spirit of the community cannot be separated from the bread that is broken and eaten together. Through the celebration of the Lord's Supper, the participants become one body. Through bodily interaction, the mutual incorporation, the Einleibung, happens, and something like a comprehensive body is formed. My second point is the theological and philosophical principles of the concept in Christianity. The biblical and thus Christian understanding of personhood as embodied and the appreciation of the human body as a place of God's revelation are unfamiliar in pagan antiquity as well as in modernity. In cultures where the body appears only as a place of impurity, sin, suffering, and passion, the biblical appreciation of the body cannot but confuse. To the ancient and to the modern ideal of the rule of reason over the body, the biblical appreciation of the body must appear absurd and dangerous. The biblical and thus Christian conception of the body contradicts the separation of body and mind that is characteristic for modernity. René Descartes has distinguished between body and mind, between res extensa and res cogitans. According to René Descartes, the modern human being gains certainty about himself precisely by reflecting himself out of this world and thus out of his body. By adopting all material and all sensual, I become aware of myself, cogito ergo sum. The modern spirit has subordinated the whole world, including its own body, as inferior and second class, and by doing so, it has defined itself as spirit. However, in late modernity, in our days, the human spirit is submitted itself to a mathematical, causality-oriented thinking. The existing reductionist naturalism is thus a consequence of the modern reduction of the living body to a lifeless object. And that we can conceive of the spirit as brain is the following of the modern reductionist of the living body to a lifeless object. In order to counter the current naturalism, it is not advisable to reactive the modern dualism between body and soul. Instead, phenomenological insights and experiences of our daily life world should be taken up. They demonstrate that the human body is much more complex and ingenious than in its scientific reconstruction. It is therefore necessary to detect the creativity and spontaneity of the body. This is precisely the concern of the embodied cognitive science and the philosophy of embodiment. Both disciplines are concerned with a non-reductionist perception of the human body, with a new concept of the relation between res cogitans and res extensa. Instead of setting nature and freedom against each other as in modernity, it is asked how, within nature, a realm of freedom could emerge and has emerged. In my opinion, there is a close proximity between the biblical concept of the human being and the current paradigm of embodiment. Both perspectives assume that a human being is always already embodied, that is, the person does not just have a body, but that the person also is the concrete body that he or she has. What is more, biblical traditions and the paradigm of embodiment recognize that subjectivity and freedom on the one side, and communicability and sociality on the other side are inscribed into the human body. Therefore, the human body cannot be understood without the dimension of inwardness on the one side and without the other bodies on the other side. In my extended paper, I would like to illustrate this point with the help of the categories of natality and vulnerability. I will draw on both those categories because the Christian tradition that is deeply rooted in the belief of the incarnation of the Son of God understands embodied beings as born and compassionate beings. Christians confess that the embodied Son of God was born and suffered. But now I will skip these parts about natality, vulnerability, and the embodiment of empathy and the fact of being born. So, third, the historical development of the concept. The biblical and thus Christian view on humans conceives them as embodied and understands the human body as a privileged medium of God's revelation. However, the history of Christianity is also characterized by a strong hostility to or against the body. In the following, it shall be outlined how this shift happened. However, simultaneously it must be argued that the biblical insight that being human also means being a body has always reappeared in the history of the Church and in the history of theology. 3.1 starting points for the Christian content for the body in Pauline texts. In my view, there are three starting points in New Testament texts to which the later Christian hostility to the body could refer. First, Paul could appreciate the body on the one hand, but he could also define a life according to the flesh as a life under sin. Second, early Christianity generally was an ascetic movement. Jesus and Paul were celibates, in celibatia. Certainly, despite the overall trend in both testaments to view human beings as a whole, both the Septuagint and the New Testament show traces of a dualistic, respective, tripartite anthropology. According to Paul, the human being lives his life in and through the body, but this body life can be lived in two different ways, either as a life in the flesh or in newness of spirit. Here it has to be emphasized that, according to Paul, the life in the spirit is lived in the body, even beyond death. But Paul also describes a connection between living in the flesh and living under the sin. Ein carnal, salt under sin. The human being who lives according to the flesh becomes a slave to the natural tendencies of his body, that is, he cares for himself and his survival. Paul believed that the natural life of a human being, you can say his biological body, has a tendency to violently pursue his own interests, including the interests of the group to which he belongs, at the expense of others. By not rising above this tendency of his body, the human being misses his or her better opportunities. Those better opportunities, which are themselves enabled by the body, include being a body for others and contribute to the embodied communication of love, faith, and hope. The Pauline appreciation of the body is countered by Paul's realistic perception of the power of sin. By contrasting an inner will, an inward person who wants the good, with the law of the human body that aims for the implementation of one's self-interest, Paul has set the scene for a later interpretation that conceives of the fight between sin and spirit in such a way that this fight becomes a battle between the human body and the human mind. Peter Brown wrote, in all later Christian writing, the notion of the flesh to fuse the body with disturbing associations. Christianity in its long history has at many times been uneasy about the inherent activity of the body. The second reason for this was the fact that Paul, as an ascetic, was critical towards the sexual desires of the body. Paul makes it clear that he wants everybody to be like him, that is a celibate. It is good for a man not to touch a woman. Only in order to prevent fornication, he grants the members of the Christian congregations to have a wife, respectively a husband, and to sleep with one's partner. The danger of porneia is so paramount to Paul that he does not even consider the possibility of a legitimate enjoyment of sexuality even within marriage. In order to understand the Pauline distrust towards human sexuality, this distrust has to be put into the historical context. In antiquity, sexuality was no playful celebration of human intercorporality, but was staged as a power discourse. Antiquity understands, quote, the sexual act primarily as a game of superiority and inferiority. Penetration puts two partners in a relationship of domination and submission. It is a victory on the one hand, defeat on the other. Therefore, Paul perceives the realm of human sexual relations as a field in which very much wrong is done. As early as in the Septuagint, a tendency can be observed to dissolve the Old Testament perception of the human being as embodied in favor of the exclusive perception of the human being as a cognitive form. According to the translation of the Shema Yisrael in the Septuagint, the Israelites shall love Adonai no longer with all your heart, but with all your mind. Accordingly, the words that God commands to his people not only shall be in your heart, but in your heart and in your soul. The bodily heart is supplemented by the spiritual soul, the tendency to disembodiment can be observed in the Septuagint. Next point, the dualistic anthropology and the resurrection of the flesh. Incorporating the few evidence of a tripartite view of the human being in the New Testament and corresponding tendencies in the Septuagint, the early church has adopted the dualistic anthropology of the Greek philosophy. However, a continuing reception of this anthropology was hindered by the Christian hope for a bodily resurrection. This hope did not allow to identify the human being exclusively with his soul as it was possible in Platonic traditions. Due to the challenge by locatistic and Gnostic positions, Orthodox theologians intensified the expectation of a bodily resurrection. In contradiction to Paul, they claimed the doctrine of the resurrection of the flesh. Occasionally they claimed even the resurrection of this flesh, huius carnis resurrection. This flesh, huius carnis. The confession of the resurrection of the flesh evokes the holistic anthropology. For example, Justine says the human being is created as a body, so that he cannot perceive without his body. Consequently, he argues, quote, as soon as the soul leaves the body, the human being does not exist anymore. Even so, the life of a human being depends on the life-giving presence of the soul in the body. The soul alone is not the human being. For the theologians of the early church, being human relies on the unity of body and soul. The Orthodox theologians confessed, quote, the faithfulness of God to his creation, which is expressed in the resurrection of the carnis substantia. 3 points. Read the unease about sexuality. Living as a celibate, Paul had a critical attitude toward marriage. However, he granted the possibility that the body of a married and thus sexually active person was the temple of the Holy Spirit. In contrast, already the Acts of Paul and Hitler from the 2nd century draw a different picture. The metaphor of the temple is used as a prize for those Christians that live sexually abstinent. Quote, blessed are they who have kept their flesh pure, for they will become the temple of God. Blessed are the abstainers to whom God will speak. This appraisal of abstinence is not unfamiliar to Paul, but is strengthened and intensified during the separation of Judaism and Christianity in post-biblical time. By Judaism emerged as the religion of the book and of the sanctified married household, Christianity counted on the idea of chastity. The new message of the coming end of the world was embodied in a celibate body. The decision to live an ascetic life could be experienced as a gain in freedom. Young people who refused to marry and to have children who resisted the expectations of society and thus the expectations of their parents, occasionally also the expectations of their spouses. In this way, the body became the place of a biopolitical protest and articulated the freedom from that which apparently both nature and society requested. With extreme clarity, this position can be found with Marcion, who built up a church which was characterized by radical asceticism. Peter Brown writes, only by rendering man and woman utterly unfamiliar to each other, by demanding that they should renounce the marriage that had previously held them together, and even by dissolving the ties that bound children to their parents, could true Christians come together in a freely chosen communion, undetermined by pre-existing family bonds, loyalties, and habits. Love and affection should not be limited and controlled to obligations towards the spouse and relatives, but imitating Christ, love and affection should overflow to strangers and socially marginalized persons. Here, asceticism serves to discover new possibilities of bodily action by following Jesus. Quote from Marcion, where the Creator had commanded man to avoid lepers, Christ had touched them. Where the Creator declared menstruating woman to be a source of impurity, Christ had allowed the woman with a flow of blood to put her hand on him. Marcion's opponent, Tertullian, warned his listener about Marcion's radicalism, which would destroy family relations. In contradiction to Marcion, Tertullian did not demand lifelong chastity, but demanded only the abstinence of older widows, male and female, who had already produced and raised children. In this way, Tertullian connected the family ethos with the ideal of asceticism. According to Tertullian, it was necessary to beget children and thus to preserve the Christian community, but also to live in celibacy at an older age and to open oneself up for God's Spirit. Quote, for by abstinence you will gain a great profit in holiness. Through limitations which are imposed on the flesh, you will become spiritual. Tertullian was not a dualist. He could ask his opponent Marcion, quid est autem homo aliud quam caro. However, with Tertullian, we have the first consequential statement, written for educated Christians and it's time to enjoy a long future in the Latin world, of the belief that abstinence from sex was the most effective technique with which to achieve clarity of the soul. Tertullian writes, quote, let's take a look at our inner self, how different a man feels when he happens to be separated from his wife. He thinks spiritually. When he prays to the Lord, he is near to heaven. When he is concerned with Scripture, he is completely immersed in it. 3.4, oblivion of the body and hostility toward the body. An ascetic Christianity could get close to the Platonic understanding of the body as dungeon of the soul, as Gefängnis der Seele. Origen, for example, praises martyrdom as a possibility to reach God. The reason for this lies in the fact that in martyrdom, the body is killed, and in this way that what prevents human from the clear vision of God is eliminated. Quote, why do we still hesitate and doubt to remove the abstractive transient body which complains the soul, the earthly dwelling which burdens the spirit, to free us from the fetters that release it from the ways which are given with flesh and blood? Until martyrdom, according to Origen, it is imperative to reduce the bodily needs to a minimum and to live dispassionate and angelic, that is disembodied. Consequently, Origen connected the fact that humans were created in the image of God solely with the inner being. The Augustinian heritage. In one of his early philosophical writings, Augustine answered the question posed by his reason, what it is that he wants to now understand. I want to know God and the soul. And when asked again by his reason, if there was nothing else that he wanted to know, he answered briefly, absolute nothing else. The body is excluded from those things that Augustine wants to understand. Accordingly, he can define the human being as soul. Quote, the human being is a rational soul possessing a mortal and earthly body. As the human being is soul and has a body. Consequently, the anthropological epistemic interests of the early Augustine focus exclusively on the soul. When Augustine becomes aware of the body appears as danger to the knowledge of the soul. Augustine could read in Cicero's Hortensius a writing that motivated his turn to philosophy, quote, for violent lust of the body cannot harmonize with rational thinking, who is able, when he enjoys a pleasure which is greater than any other, to concentrate his mind on something else. For Augustine, the desires and passions of the body are concentrated in the field of sexuality. In his description of his confession, the topics of sexual desire and asceticism are paramount. Another quote, the libido, quote, rules the whole body, both internally and externally, and since the desire of the soul unites with the sensual desire, it brings the whole man in agitation. This is followed by that sensual pleasure, with whose intensity no other bodily pleasure can be compared. At its peak, it extinguishes almost all the sharpness and alertness of thought. Also, the sexual desire is just one of many possible desires that human beings can succumb to, for Augustine the sexual desire became the clear symptom for the human condition as such. And now a short excursus about the Christianity of the majority and the moral teaching of the elites. The Christian attitude towards sexuality, illustrated here, was that of the elites. This attitude of the elites should not conceal the fact that the majority of Christians lived in marriage and could arrange a Christian existence with a joyous sexuality. Vis-à-vis the strict ascetic movements, theologians such as Tertullian and Augustine could accept this fact. As an allowance in order to prevent fornication, Augustine could even grant couples and sexual activity, quote, which does not happen under the control of the will to the effect of posterity, but to the victory of pleasure for the sake of pleasure. In this way, Christianity took shape as a religion of two ways, as already described by Eusebius of Caesarea. Quote, two ways of life were thus given by the Lord to the Church. The one is above nature and beyond common human living, and admits not marriage, childbearing, property, nor the possession of else. And the more humble, more human way prompts men to join in pure nuptials and to produce children. Without people who took the second way, the early church would not have survived in antiquity. However, the Christian elites did not consider the second way as equal to the first one, as become clear in the aforementioned quote. The ideal of the chastity of the elites cast a shadow on the actions of the majority of Christians. Quote of Peter Brown, to beget children with a certain medically approved zest as a duty to the earthly city was no longer enough. The Christian married couple must descend with a certain sadness. Quote from Augustine, the Christian married couple must descend with a certain sadness to that particular task, for in the act of married intercourse itself, their very body spoke to them of Adam's fall. End of excursus. According to Augustine, mankind had not been obedient to God in paradise. Therefore, God has punished mankind with a body that is disobedient to the soul. The body's resistance to the human will becomes not only visible in sexuality, but also in the phenomenon of illness. It's really interesting, this connection between sexuality and illness. Consequently, Augustine teaches that both the body before the fall, but also the bodies of the resurrected righteous man are free from illness and desires. His distrust towards the ill body, towards the lust of the body, and towards the inherent activity and self-initiative of the body is inherited by the Middle Age. The practical content for the body comes along with a theoretical ignorance of the body. Also, Augustine suffered from the activity and initiative of his body. This was hardly the real problem for him. Staying true to his early agenda, to know God as a soul, his real question deals with the perversion of the will, the experience of the split will within the soul itself. Quote, where does this monstrous come from? The soul commands the body, and he obeys. The soul commands the soul itself, and it encounters resistance. There's a defect in the soul which involuntarily bends low to the flesh, the concupiscentia carnis. The term flesh, as Augustine repeatedly declares, does not mean body, but all that tempts human beings to prefer their own will over God's will. This concupiscentia carnis becomes visible in sexuality, but does not lie primarily in the body, but in a lasting distortion of the soul itself. With Adam's fall, the soul lost the ability to summon up all of itself in an undivided act of will to love and praise God in all created things. Illustrating the concupiscentia carnis as sexual desires, Augustine contributes to the hostility towards the body within Christian traditions. However, by understanding the concupiscentia carnis as a distortion of the soul, Augustine deflects the anthropological interest away from the body, not the body, but the soul and the will become central categories in later theology. And now I skip parts about the devaluation of the body in the Middle Ages, skip the part about scholasticism and about Reformation, and have a short view on the perception of the concept within different Christian schools of thought. The theology of the 19th century was in favor of a dualistic anthropology. Friedrich Schleiermacher was not interested in the nature, but only in the dominion of the nature, in the dominion of the spirit about the nature. In his Christology, he focuses on Christ's God consciousness, and he is totally disinterested in the question of a bodily resurrection. In the 20th century, we can see a rediscovery of a concrete monism, which, in difference to an abstract monism, does not dissolve the tension between being a body and having a body in any one direction. And I guess we can see here similar tendencies in the theology of Karl Barth on the one side and Karl Rahner on the other side. Nevertheless, both theologians still teaches the superiority of the soul and the subordination of the body. Five possible dialogical elements. The subject of this chapter can only be developed in greater detail after this conference. As suggestion for further discussion, I would just like to point out the following. From a Christian perspective, the appreciation of the body lies in the perception of the incarnation of the Son of God. The Word became flesh. This Christological profession has prevented a continuous reception of the Greek dualism in the early church and has in modernity led to the recognition of the human right for physical integrity and bodily joys. It could be asked, which theological symbol system enabled and demands the development of a body affirmative ethics and perception of the world both in Judaism and Islam. Old Testament traditions portray the human being as the image of God precisely in and through his body-likeness. The human being should prepare the way for God's justice in the world. Accordingly, in the Quran, the human being is understood as God's caliph. Which meaning does embodiment have for the realization of God's justice on earth? As a body, every human being is necessarily a sexual being. The so-called hostility towards the body Christianity is, at its origin, hostility towards sexuality. The historical background from which Christianity emerged can explain this attitude. At a time when sexuality was mainly staged as a power discourse, asceticism promised the gain and freedom. In Christianity, ascetic ideals found their way into the canon, and the ideal of virginity shaped the early church. However, Judaism did not include ascetic traditions into the Hebrew Bible, and these traditions were not received among the prevailing rabbinic traditions either. How did the ideal of family instead of the ideal of virginity shape the Jewish attitude towards the body and sexuality? And which answers were found in the Quran as a document of late antiquity on the then dominant aim to discipline the body and especially the sexual desires? As body life, human life is finite. Even the incarnated Son of God dies. In Christianity, only the theologies of the 20th century has rediscovered this radical finitude of human beings, and thus has uncovered a common feature of Judaism and Christianity. In dialogue with Judaism and Islam, it now has to be discussed how the monotheistic religions can keep loyalty to the earth without to abandon all hope. I skip the sixth part and come to the last part, an outline of the practical applications. A theological anthropology of the body should perceive both the power and the wisdom of the body. Thus, the theological anthropology corrects the distrust towards the body that has been deeply inscribed into Christianity. Furthermore, it helps to understand how the body relieves us from consciously controlling all steps of our life, and thus gives freedom to the human being to invest his consciousness in more complex aims beyond the daily routines. One of the leading figures in the embodiment research from Gregor writes, the normal and healthy subject can in large measure forget about her body in the normal routine of the day. The body takes care of itself, and in doing so it enables the subject to attend with relative ease to other practical aspects of life. To the extent that the body effaces itself, it grants the subject freedom to think of other things. Understanding the wisdom of the body, the theological anthropology can agree with the sociologist and social philosopher Hans Joas. He argues, in the pragmatist tradition, he argues that a human person, in order to solve a problem, should open oneself up for, quote, the ideas and new approaches that arise from the pre-reflexive intentionality of the human body. Because the theological anthropology of embodiment highlights the body's dignity as well as its vulnerability and finitude, the theological anthropology contributes to ethical orientation. First, it reminds us, taking up insights from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, that God has established the dignity of the human flesh through the incarnation of his Logos. The body is therefore nothing that has to be overcome or transcended. Instead, God conceives of the body as an end in himself. Therefore, the human dignity includes the right for physical integrity. The perception of the incarnation prevents the demonization of the flesh and its vitality. The incarnated is God's yes, quote of Bonhoeffer, is God's yes to creation, to becoming, to growth. Yes to the unfolding of the power of life. End of quote. This is why the idea of the human dignity includes the right for bodily pleasures. Again, quote from Bonhoeffer, but if the body has its own purpose, there's a right to body pleasures which are not to be subordinated to a higher purpose. It is the very nature of joy itself that is corrupted by thoughts of purpose. End of quote. And in this context, Bonhoeffer appreciates the Old Testament Song of Songs. He welcomes that this book is part of the Bible as a question to those who see the nature of Christianity in tempering the passions. Instead, there is a justification of the natural, an appreciation of bodily joys, an appreciation of the passions, and, quote Bonhoeffer, a right to happiness. Everybody who affirms the human right to bodily joys will also affirm sexuality as a life-affirming expression of the body. Thus, the lasting distortion towards this area of life, which has caused the Christian mistrust towards the body, is counteracted. Sexuality is then understood as a good gift of creation by God, in which humans may rejoice, and that has to be shaped responsibly. The right of the ascetic traditions of Christianity is preserved insofar as the street that sexuality can be staged as a power discourse is made conscious. In light of the omnipresence of sexual violence, in light of the language of male adolescents who describe sexuality as conquest and war, and finally in light of the economization of sexuality by the market value sexiness, it is necessary to realistically name the many dangers to the good gift of creation that sexuality is. Against these distortions of sexuality, the biblical not stir up or awaken love from the Song of Songs has to be clearly articulated. By highlighting the vulnerability of human beings, the theology of the body contradicts an abstract conception of autonomy. The latter fails to see that the human being is not the sovereign of his life, but that by living in and through his body, he is always co-shaped and influenced by others. Bodily finite life does not take place in autonomous self-design, but permanently relies on the respect and care through the others. Even those phases of life where we experience our options and possibilities as limited can be seen as an enrichment of our life, because it is precisely then that we have the exhilarating experience that others restrain themselves in favor of me, and in this time and work and thereby laugh in my life. By highlighting the finitude of the human being, the theology of the body introduces a life-affirming differentiation to the perception of the ill body. The theology of the body distinguishes between the phenomenon of finitude which has to be accepted, and the phenomenon of illness that has to be defeated as far as possible. The insight that even experience of declining vitality belong to being human is closed off by modernity. Instead, modernity pathologizes all the processes of decline vitality, beginning with the quite banal phenomena of jet lag and hair loss, but includes all forms of exhaustion and aging. In contrast to this, it should be asked whether it could serve humans and our humanism not to pathologize every decline vitality, but to understand them as phenomena which are part of human life, insofar as human life is a finite life. Accepting finitude does not only mean accepting the decline of physical, mental, and cognitive abilities. Accepting finitude also includes to accept that life takes place in growth and decline, and life wants to be lived as such. As bodily life, human life participates at the rhythm of nature that is biblically explicitly described as a blessing. However, those rhythms, solche Rhythmen, are constantly questioned in late modernity. Quote, "Worrying about today's experience of time is not the acceleration as such, but the missing conclusion of it. That is the lack of tact and rhythm. Time is falling because nowhere does it come to a conclusion. Also, the more widespread sleeplessness stems from the inability to close. You have to be able to finish the day to fall asleep. Today your eyes are closed, if at all, by fatigue and exhaustion. The eyes just shut up, which is not an end." Quote of Byung-Chul Han. Similar to the daily rhythm, the rhythm of the Sabbath, one of the big discoveries and social cultural invitations of the Hebrew tradition, comes under pressure too. In the rhythm of the Shabbat, the wisdom is expressed that besides time for creativity, embodied life need time for leisure and recreation. Thank you very much for your attention.